Welcome to another edition of Interruptions. I'm your host. I got a legend in the building again today, y'all. This man is the co-founder of a group that brought you songs like "I Call Your Name," "There Never Be," "I Want to Be Closer," "Love Over and Over Again." If you look at my backdrop, you should know I'm talking about the legendary group and the founder of this group, Mr. Gregory Williams of Switch. How you doing, sir?
I'm great, Otis. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate being here.
I appreciate you coming on the show. Ever since I saw the BET did the unsung on you guys, I was a fan. And you know what's so funny? Because I grew up in that era, right? When you guys
Gotcha.
came out, because I was born in '71.
Okay.
So
Right.
what what threw us off? So I'm in elementary school when the group DeBarge comes out, right?
Okay.
So then we hear, how radio does. It comes back and it'll play like Switch, right? So it'll play and it's like we thinking, because we kids, right? So we're thinking DeBarge then dropped a new song.
Understood.
So then
Understood.
you kids, you still hadn't put two and two together, that like this is the older brother. This is one that started. Okay, you don't know this until you get
Right.
a little bit older, and because I think I was in like the seventh grade when the barge came out, and so I wanted to tell you just so you'll get appreciation for your group. Before I start my first question, I
Right.
go back, and if you type in switch and there's this do like first reaction, right? You
Okay.
you you'll see
Yes,
there's a whole new generation.
absolutely. I do.
Who's
I check them out and
okay,
comment.
okay, okay, okay. So I try to tell people, say, man, there's a whole new generation who's discovering, and now they trying to figure out why they music don't sound.
You're right. You're absolutely right, man. I mean, and they're making the comparison and saying, now this is music. So I'm honored that they're seeing it that way. I do. I wound up going on there quite a few times. There's quite a few of them that have done. First
Yes.
time I heard I Call Your Name. First time I heard I Want to Be Closer. First time I heard They'll Never
Hmm.
Be. And it's really cool, man. It's really cool to see these kids keeping up with us.
Yeah, so I just always like to let people know, just in case they didn't know. So I'm glad you've done that. Um, and like I said, I formed my questions based off just the unsung, what they did unsung on your group Switch. And so
Gotcha.
my first question I wanted to ask you, because I was curious, is, and I'll give you context why I asked the question. Uh,
But
because I'm not a messy person, so I don't never, you don't know me from Adam, so I always like to let people know I'm not messy. So that's why I try to give a context of why I asked the question.
I can
Uh, but
appreciate that.
but the first question is, was there a serious problem in the group when you guys first signed to Motown? So the reason I asked that question is because knowing the history of your group, where you guys had already done background vocals and done things for Mr. Barry White, you guys were already out there, and then at that time, Bobby DeBarge wasn't with the group. And then once you guys got signed to Motown, and you was like, okay, you guys were like, we need a singer or whatever. And some guys said, hey, let's go get Bobby, let's bring Bobby back. And some were like, not sure. Was there already tension as you guys were putting the group together, as we
Okay.
saw it, you guys coming out as Switch?
Something, I appreciate your question because it's not the typical question. You
I
know,
try not to
and
have the
you,
same. You
and
have the
you make
same
me
cover.
dig, and you may dig deep. And it was all those old fluff questions and people getting inaccurate information that made me write this book, Switch to Barge, Motown, and Me. I'm sure we'll get into it as we go. But to tell you that story,
Hmm.
Bobby and I grew up together.
Right.
When I got Bobby in White Heat, incidentally, you mentioned the group worked with Barry White. That was White Heat.
White Heat.
And
Right.
myself Bobby DeBarge and Jody Sims were the only one in that group. Okay, of the Switch crew. So it was not a group already becoming Switch.
Right.
I handpicked each guy I wanted to be in Switch. But
Correct.
getting to your point, there was a guy, Bobby and I grew up together. Bobby had some issues. All his life he's had issues because of his upbringing, because of
Correct.
abuse and other stuff,
Correct.
which I touched on in the Unsung and elaborated on in my book.
In the book, right.
The thing of it is I knew through the White Heat journey and other bands that I had put together that Bobby was in, that Bobby had some issues. Well, at the point in time I was putting Switch together, that I decided it was time to put my band together, Bobby was on drugs, on top of the other psychological issues that he had.
Sure.
And I knew that Bobby would destroy my group.
Right.
So I did not pick Bobby to be in there first. I had another guy out of Mansfield, Ohio, Arnie Hayes, who sang in that upper register and was one of the best, still is one of the best keyboard players I've heard in my life.
Gotcha.
Anyway, so it was Arnie. I picked Philip Ingram. I picked Eddie Fluellen, who was Philip's partner. I picked Tommy because Tommy and Bobby were both my brothers. And Tommy's my little brother. And he's a little less jaded at the time, so I can mold him and shape him into something better. And of course, I picked Jody Sims because Jody was on the White Heat ride with us, and he was close when I put the group together.
Right.
So anyway, what happened is when me and Jody, we cut a demo with the other guys, with Philip, Eddie, Tommy, and Arnie, and we moved to, Jody and I decided we're going to take the thing to LA. So we took it to LA. We were there, strangely enough, for 9 days, and we wound up meeting Jermaine Jackson in the elevator, and I'll elaborate on that when you want me to. But anyway, just from that initial meeting with Jermaine and his wife, Hazel Gordy Jackson, Barry's daughter, from that initial meeting, we pretty much had a deal.
Right.
Well, but Motown wanted to bring us out so we could do a showcase.
Do a showcase, right.
Okay.
Off the one tape you already, I meant the one song you had on the tape.
No. It was like 6 songs on that tape.
6 songs. Okay.
But it was only one tape we had. Meaning we had one damn cassette because we couldn't afford to get more than one. And the minute we gave that damn tape to Jermaine, we was out of business.
Gotcha.
But fortunately, he called within 24 hours.
Okay.
And again, I'll elaborate on that more when we talk about it. But the thing is we had to deal with Motown. Motown wanted to showcase. Arnie, the guy that I had singing in that register, decides he's not coming.
Oh, wow. And
I consider my other options when Arnie finally let me know after playing with me for a week or so. Okay. While Motown was waiting to hear who's coming, what bus ticket we got to buy.
Right.
You know, Arnie's not coming. So I'm trying to figure out next who's there. Now, keep this in mind, even though some alluded to the fact that they didn't want or they figured that it'd be a bad move to bring Bobby, that was nobody's decision but mine. Right. Period. To bring him or not to bring him. Right. I have the courtesy of sharing with my brothers in this life what we're dealing with. But the real bottom line to it is if Greg said he wants Bobby in the group, Bobby gonna be in the group. And if not. Okay. Well, I had a couple other options at that moment when Arnie refused to come. But I'm knowing I was gonna go back and get Bobby anyway, because that's my brother, and I was gonna help him. I was just gonna get this group off the ground and go back and get him. Right. So I reached out to him, talked to him about, what he was doing, especially about the heroin thing, and he promised me he'd kick. Okay. And even under addiction, Bobby's word was good. It might not be okay on Thursday and Friday, but if he gave it to you on Tuesday, then go with him. That kind of thing.
I got
you. I told the guys what we were doing, and everybody agreed because they didn't even know him. To be honest with you, Jody did, but the others, and of course Tommy, that's his brother, but the others didn't. They didn't have a voice in that. Right. But anyway, we pulled him in and we moved it forward. Sadly enough, just to share this, the thing that I thought Bobby would ultimately do in destroying the group, it wound up happening. It's just 3 years later.
And that's why I asked that question, because just from watching you guys' conversation, on song, right? That like you said, your fear came true, and you knew how talented he was. You knew how gifted he was.
Oh, that wasn't even a question.
But this is what you knew, that because you knew you knew the family. In other words, it wasn't just Bobby and Tommy. You knew the whole family.
I was a part of that family.
Correct. Y'all went to church together and everything. And what you knew, it wasn't just if the drugs. You also knew psychological, that there was there were some things going on that, let's face it, a lot of us, it can destroy you. It can destroy you.
Oh, of course,
You
of
know,
course.
and so you were, as a friend, also you was hesitant because you're looking like you knew there was issue that hadn't been dealt with yet, and so you knew that maybe with a, functional drug or a full addict, whatever that looks like, you knew that's just a manifestation of issues that just hadn't been dealt with, and that's what really made you nervous, because you was like,
Reluctant.
when it's time to work, we got to go, we got to do this, that, and you knew that if these issues are not resolved, it's going to derail. So I wanted to
Nothing.
paint that like that, because I don't want people to
Understood.
take you like, oh, he trying to go some kind of way, you know.
No, and the bottom line is, Switch was my group. I could have went any kind of way I wanted to
Hmm.
go. Fact. But the bottom line is, Bobby was also my brother. I love him to this day. Not to mention this, to me, in
Hmm.
my heart and mind, Bobby DeBarge is the greatest R&B falsetto God put on this planet, as
Man,
well as a talent. Okay, otherwise. So the thing of it is I'm gonna have a bad group with Bobby no matter what. But how long will I have a group if he comes in and destroys it? And I'm not only referring to what his actions would do, I'm talking about what his actions would cause. These
right.
other guys who are high on music and high on being in the entertainment and loyal to the cause overall, they get
Mhm.
damaged in the course of that and can get discouraged.
Let me ask you the follow-up question to that, which is kind of in the same vein. Far as, do you feel like, um because you and of course Tommy, his brother, of course, only ones knew Bobby, do you think that when you guys were signing to Motown, you was putting together because the other guy, lead singer that you had left, do you think once inserting Bobby that the foundation of Switch wasn't holistic, as a group, and you were going to eventually, like you stated, there was going to be problems because the foundation is not, is, in other words, you brought him in but you didn't lay a new foundation to the group.
Well, actually, I did lay a new foundation, true,
Okay.
because
Okay.
once I brought him in and we cleaned him up, I knew I could count on him. I didn't
Okay.
just love him just because he was there. There
Right.
was aspects of Bobby being an awesome human being, period. The
Okay.
hell with just his talent. That was a guy that he was more man than most men I knew,
Right.
you know, but he had issues that would ultimately do damage. No, the whole thing of it is, and I dare say this,
Hmm.
Swift ultimately wound up being a better group with Bobby than it did without.
Right. Yeah.
Even though I love Arnie and Arnie was a great guy, Arnie was not Bobby. Bobby brought magic to the table, man. Come on, and I ain't stupid and I ain't blind, but let me also tell you this. All
Right.
my life, I've had intuition. I can
Hmm.
see clearly. In fact, when I was 16 years old, I was playing my mom's stereo. I sit in front of my mom's stereo in the living room and I practice on my trumpet. So I was
Hmm.
going through the albums there at the house to see which one that I would rehearse to. Now,
Hmm.
keep in mind that I never idolized anyone. I don't do that. That's not who I am. I'm
Sure.
proud. My family is full of musicians,
Hmm.
and I admired them, but I don't idolize nobody. And that they encouraged and supported. But the thing of it was, is I'm looking through these albums, and all of a sudden I run into a Jackson 5 album, and out of nowhere, I look at Jermaine and I say, if I'm gonna connect with anybody, I'm gonna connect with this dude.
Gotcha.
4 years later, it manifested just
It
like
meant
that.
just like that.
So I willed it into existence. But it was also my intuition. I also knew that this group would do what it was going to do. I also knew that it wasn't going to last forever. So that alone says I had a plan, I had a concept, I had an idea, and Bobby was not going to destroy it. He would do damage at some point because Bobby was on self-destruct his whole life. He was. So I knew damage would happen later. But I'm wondering, can we set this up and ride it out long enough for it to matter?
Ultimate.
And
Yeah.
that's what you look behind me, you see all these gold
I was
albums
about
and
to
stuff.
say.
We were there
It.
long enough for it to matter.
It
The fact
did.
that you're talking to me today, the fact that I got a book and so much other stuff
Yes.
going on, and the fact that Switch is working. We're on tour right now. That's
Yep.
why I'm preparing to go on tour. It was worth it.
It
It
was
was
worth
really
it.
worth it.
It
So
was
anyway,
worth it. No, no. Let me ask you this. Uh, because I don't know if you ever got this question. You could have, but I'm hoping I'm the first one to ask you this question, which is, what did every member bring to the group
oh
Switch?
God. Oh God, man! First and foremost, as I said, I created Switch sitting on my
Yes.
mama's stuff.
Right.
Okay, and I decided I would ask myself, what did I want to do most? Because I was
Hmm.
entertainment from the age 6. I've
Hmm.
acted, I've been in plays, I've did speaking engagement, all kind of stuff since 6. What was it that I want the most? And what I decided I wanted the most was to be a producer. I said, well, what's going to get you there the fastest? And I knew going through a group to get the attention would get
Right.
there fastest. Well, what
Right.
kind of group? And I decided, since I'd been in so many bands throughout the years, and I played trumpet and keyboard and
Hmm.
sang and stepped and all that, I wanted guys that had equal talents to mine, where we
Gotcha.
played more than one instrument, where everybody could sing, lead and background.
Gotcha.
Okay? So in pulling all of that, being blessed to be able to handpick guys that had that magic. More importantly, I wanted guys with like mine. That's where the conflict came in with Bobby, because I wanted guys
Right.
that had that do or die dream,
Right.
which Bobby did have, but who was
Hmm.
willing to give it all,
Hmm.
and he had issues that blocked some of that. But bottom line to the whole thing is, in wanting all of this and creating all of this and finding all the right guys to make it happen, that was the foundation for it all. That kind of made it make sense and made it work, because all of us brought so much to the table.
Yeah, because and that's what people don't realize when you have a group, a band, everybody has a role to play. Like you can have a guy who, when you guys are doing interviews, that person may not say much, but
Right.
behind the scenes, he may be the one that say, "Hey, come on, man, we let's not ruin this. Let's this, let's that." He's the peacekeeper.
Yes. Yes.
You got somebody else that may say, "Hey, man, I think we should rock this on stage. We should
Right.
wear this. We should," and it
Right.
all contributes to the overall. And you know what? Until still until this day, and I could be remiss, I could be wrong, but the name switch and why you guys got your name, you still don't see anybody doing that. Where, like, I don't know if you guys were at a club, or I don't know where, what the when it's there'll never be, and Bobby starts off on the keyboard, and then he gets up, and then there was another time I saw Bobby started off on the drums, and
Yep.
then he gets up. Like, you don't see that. Normally the lead singer is the lead singer, right? Like, he's
Bottom line.
there from the beginning. But you guys had an interesting way of your intro of your music. It's like you guys didn't want the fans to know, the audience to know who was about to sing.
Who was
So
gonna
you
do what? Right.
Yeah, you guys
I,
would start off playing, and the fans look, okay, well, who gonna do what? And then whoever turn it was the lead, that song, came up. Then that was brilliant, man. That was
and
brilliant.
not to mention the fact that, like you said, Bobby would start out on the drums, but if Bobby started out on the drums, that means Jody was up front singing. That means that I may have been on my horn or on a keyboard or something, or singing. It don't matter. And
Yeah,
Philip may have been on percussion, but he might have been back there on the bass.
bass.
And that's what we did, man. In the middle of a showcase, that's what we did. That's how we got that name, showing off like that to Motown family.
And you still haven't seen anybody do that since you all.
No,
You haven't
no.
seen anybody say, I'm starting off here, and then I'm gonna go, because we've seen people, yeah, they've been at the keyboard or the piano, but the microphone is right there. See, that's the trick. What people don't realize that you guys did. You didn't have Bobby or Ingram or someone else at the keyboard or at the drum and then put the mic there where they're
Nope.
playing and singing there. That we can understand that. What you guys did is you had the intro, the guy's playing, he gets up from that instrument, go and sing, and someone takes his spot from where
And
he's
keep the
just,
music together and
and
keep it solid.
that's, man,
Ain't nothing missing.
ain't nothing.
That's
Nobody,
what I
yeah.
Otis. That's what I saw when I sat there on them steps and created that. That's what I saw. I saw guys being able to do that. I dare say this. The
Uh-huh.
group itself wound up it exceeded my vision.
Okay.
With the help of Barry Gordy and the Motown machinery and all of that, it exceeded my vision. But I knew I had this from the gate. But that raw diamond you don't see until it's polished. And once we got polished, you see all of that stuff.
Let me ask you this, because I don't think this was explored enough in on song, and I don't even know if you put this in your book yet. When you did your book, when okay, so you know how when the group was breaking up and Bobby was bringing his siblings along, he wanted a solo deal, right? And you guys were not. I think you had like one album left, right, to put out, which they put out like after the group was no longer. They put the album in, which means they weren't behind it. But do you actually think that Motown really saw the talents within the group, or did they just get enamored with Bobby's vocals?
Let me say this. Initially, they saw it all.
Mm-hmm.
But in true Berry Gordy form, Berry Gordy saw Smokey and the Miracles, not the whole unit. Berry
Right.
saw Diana and the Supremes, not the whole unit. Berry saw Michael and the Jackson Five, not, and although Jermaine got some,
Yeah.
but not the whole unit. So, and Berry was the bottom line. He took an interest in Switch. We were fortunate that we had him, don't get me wrong,
I got
because
you.
I've seen acts at that label in the lobby when I signed to the company and in the lobby when I left. So
Mm-hmm.
meaning that without the attention of that Motown family, of that Gordy family,
Sure.
you may or may not get through. Okay, with that in mind, and that being my point, I think they initially saw the overall, but as it evolved, Berry did what he always did, true to form. He singles it, he turns the group into an individual. He does that. He always did that. And that's where he puts his backing, that's where he puts his support.
That's why I asked that question, because if I see you guys and I'm sitting here where Barry, Jermaine, everybody that was at Motown at the showcase, and I'm watching you guys, and I'm seeing this guy saying he switched, this guy saying he switched, right? If I'm looking and saying, okay, this guy wants a solo project, but all these guys are still talented, like, because we saw them when they came in as raw material, that this guy could do this guy could do that, this guy could do that. Yes, he could also step in the, because sometimes you can, let's face it, let's take the example that you use. First you had the Jackson Five, right? And then you had Michael go solo, right? Well, Michael's solo career didn't sound like the Jackson Five.
No, did not.
So the same thing could have been done with Switch. Okay, you have this particular sound with uh with Bobby DeBarge, but if he leaves, you can just have a different sound of Switch, still Switch, but just a different sound based on who's still there, the vocals, and you was already producing, and you guys were already used to each other, playing with each other, knowing each other weakness and strength. You could have created, because think about it, to last anyway from more than a handful of years, you got to reinvent yourself anyway.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing to that is, all of us, there was so much talent in Switch. After Berry zeroed in, it became a detriment at a point. It really
Okay.
did.
Okay.
But all of us were able, for example, right now, Switch still has 4 original members.
Right.
So that, and we're still kicking butt on stage and performances. And we found somebody that we believed in enough to complete the Switch sound, and he's been with us for 20 years.
Okay.
So out of that Motown situation, we all were able to flourish again.
Right.
But under Barry's thumb, he was working with it the way he wanted to, the way he saw it. And I ain't mad at it.
Right.
Because without Barry's help, we would not be a legendary band. It's just that simple.
Yes.
But it was just his business mode. Okay.
Right.
And I will tell you, and I did write about it in my book to answer your question. I elaborated on my book. And I talked about the joys and pains of it all and my anger in it all. You know, how shit went down, excuse me.
No,
but I talked about it. I don't have a problem with talking about it.
Right.
So anyway, just sharing that one.
No, that's good, because I just wondered that, because like I said, a lot of times when you do these documentaries like you guys did on song, you guys are telling your but there's not like a follow up. There's not like a, where you can go deeper because you have.
Okay, let me help you out with that one.
Mm-hmm.
This book.
No, I
It's
know you
five.
went deeper in the book. I just
No. But what
yeah.
I'm elaborating on is this. This
Okay,
book is
yes, sir.
546 pages of the
Ooh.
history of Gregory Williams and Switch. And from everybody's comments, it's a good read. Of all the reviews that I've seen, especially on Amazon, and there are about 30 of them, there's
Mm-hmm.
only 2 people that have negative.
Okay.
And their negatives is something that in them that they saw. It ain't anything about really about this book if you
I
listen
got you.
to it. I said that to say this.
Sure.
I continue after this book. I'm 186 pages into book 6.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention, I am probably in my 2nd month of a full, complete documentary on Switch.
Gotcha.
I'm
Okay.
also entertaining rights to a movie because that Bobby DeBarge garbage that they put out on BET, that's garbage. It's untrue. They made it up. They didn't interview any DeBarge. They did not interview any of Switch. They just, some cat came up with it and it turned out to be garbage. I refuse to watch it or respect it. Okay?
I
So
don't
I
blame
am
you.
in talks about a real movie.
And you, guess what? You took that from, because I was about
And
to ask you.
say
I was like, hey man, you got to, hey man, because New Edition showed that it's best to tell your story while you're here, because if
damn
you
right.
let somebody else tell it, like you said, and that's one of the questions. Since you brought that up, let me go ahead and ask that question because I'm curious. Can you give us a brief synopsis of who Bobby DeBarge was? Because we, from the fan perspective, and then, like you said, people got tainted with that, what they did with that movie and all that. Can you give us like, in other words, like the guy you knew, your brother, but when you was before you put the band together, you knew him before you left Michigan to put the band together and everything. And then, far as what you knew of him, the trials and tribulations, and what you knew of him, before his passing, what allowed you to still say, that's my friend, that's my brother, and I still love him.
Man, you have no idea the roads that Bobby and I traveled together, first and foremost. Besides his talent, which, as I said earlier, I think he's the greatest that's been put on the planet, as far as his being R&B vocalist, and his writing matched. The talent was one thing, but the person I met and the person that I got to know and the person I loved, Bobby DeBarge was really something special. He had issues that were beyond his control. They were bigger than he was. So he was constantly trying to find his way, and he was constantly trying to reassure himself. That's another thing that destroyed him, because as you read your own press and you got people in your ear telling you you're this, you're that, and those other people around you ain't nothing, it destroys you. One thing about Bobby's in my relationship, I fought with him, but I fought for him.
Gotcha.
All the way down the line.
Yeah.
All the way down. I had to. I didn't have a problem, grabbing him in his collar, although we didn't go that far. We didn't get physical. But I wouldn't have had a problem grabbing him in his collar and saying, nigga, what?
Right.
I wouldn't have no problem with that, because that's the kind of relationship that he and I had all those years. Bobby DeBarge was proud, and he was happy when he conquered mountains that he thought he'd never conquer. And he was appreciative of things that were given to him, that he acknowledged were given to him, versus he just took them. Okay, with that said, I'll share this. A lot of people do not know, and certain people have, based on innuendo and garbage, said that our relationship was contentious. Our relationship had its ups and its downs. But you know this, man? And I'm going to tell you something on your show that I haven't told anybody.
All right.
Bobby died of AIDS in August of 1976. In January of 76, it had ravaged his body and his mind so much that he couldn't live with his wife and his kids, because he was just a whole nother person. So where did he live? He came and he lived with me.
Gotcha.
For 3 months. And when he left my house, it's 6 weeks before he died, and that's when they put him in hospice. And at that point, the AIDS had eaten his thought process up so much that most things in his life was unidentifiable, and most things in his life he was unsure of.
Sure.
Now, I do write about that in my second book. I mean, and there's a lot of tear-stained pages in my writing,
Yeah.
because again, that was my brother. He was something special to me. He always will be. Yeah, he had some messed up stuff going on with him. And he did harm with some of that messed up stuff. Because
Yeah.
a hurt dog gonna hurt somebody else, and you got to know that.
Yeah, of course.
But this was a special human being, no matter what. To me, he always will be. And I understand. I may not understand the depth of the pain that was imposed on him, but I know that he had a hard life because of it.
Well,
And
I
he
think
needed something and somebody to hold his hand and get him through.
I think because you being close to the family, it's one of those things like you knew. I'm talking about you, Mr.
Yeah.
Williams. You
Yeah.
knew, but it's just that you wasn't experiencing it yourself. Like I'm sure there was times that you sat and you knew whether he was acting out, like just being a pain in the behind, but you knew it was coming from. But you probably also like we can't have this as a group, but at the same time, you knew I'm just talking about in your quiet time, you knew you was like, man, that's like you can't even imagine. Like just from me watching when the DeBarge family did their own unsung themselves.
Yeah, I
And
was on that too.
yeah, I saw you was on that and talking about the part where him being tormented and the stuff they went through with their father, and you going through that. It was almost like he needed love, he needed reassurance, he needed, um, but he got fame because of his talent. He got fame, and a lot of times you don't know what to do with all that stuff. I tell people all the time, sometimes you know what you're feeling, you can articulate what you're feeling, but you don't know what to do with those feelings, and
That's
that's where
right.
the problem becomes. You don't know what to do with all this stuff.
And in Bobby's life, it created a false sense of security that he had always craved anyway.
Yeah.
It did. It gave him something that he'd never had. And like you say, not knowing what to do with it, well, not knowing how to interpret it was where it began.
Correct.
That's really, so therefore he put it in a place that would do him some good. I'm this. I'm Switch. And you know what? To be honest with you, until it began to hurt my group, I was happy he had it.
Yeah.
Because it gave him a sense of love for Bobby. And I know he needed that so badly. And I had been trying to give him that all those years. I mean, I knew what I was going to be all my life, man. And I knew that I was going to get what I was going after. So I could lend to other situations without any hesitation. I could lend to other situations. And so I took people under my wing, and I took people into my heart, and I took them into my home, and I looked out for them as best I could, as fragile as I was, because I didn't come up in no perfect setting either. But I did not have to endure the psychological damage that he
Right.
endured
Yeah.
and any kind of abuse. I had good parents, even though my dad was around the corner, but my mama was the bomb. She loved her baby. So I didn't have to, and I was surrounded by her family. So I didn't have to deal with that. But I was able to understand enough about it to say, okay, this is my brother. I got to help him as best I can. And I did as best I could. And I'm not looking for a pat on the back because
No, 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 no.
God got me for that one. And I know that.
Yeah, I do that because I want to paint it. I want to paint a correct picture because, like you said, the people that comment in the book, sometimes people think that you're dumping on Mr. Bobby DeBarge or the group is blaming him for every single
No.
thing, and it led me to my next question, guys. I wanted to ask this question, like I said, because I saw you guys unsung, which I had all the members in the in the group except, of course, Bobby DeBarge because he had already passed. Um, do you feel like everybody had a role? Now, I won't say everybody, but there were other people in the group as well that also had a part of the group kind of in unhinging a little bit there
Yes, of
because
course.
yeah, because
Yeah.
sometimes people take it as, man, they just dumping on the lead singer. See, they were just jealous. They was just, and so I like to give you the opportunity to dispel that myth that people thinking that you guys are trying to put everything
Get
on
this
Bobby
part,
DeBarge.
man.
Yeah.
Get this part.
Hmm.
A marriage is between two people.
Yep.
If that marriage fall apart, it ain't just one person. Because
Right.
even if it fall apart because the one person cheated or is got issues or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
it was either allowed or assisted by the other party to get to the point it got where they had to go.
Right.
So in a breakup, nobody's innocent. There may be an extent of your participation in it,
Right.
but there is some extent in your participation. But just like this in a marriage as well, it takes two people to make it happen. He may not make the money she make, but she may not carry the strength that he carries,
Right.
or the logic that he can. And see, the whole thing of it is, it don't matter what you bring to the table. It just matters that you bring to the table what you got. And if somebody feels it's enough, then you can keep going. And if they don't feel it's enough, then you can't keep going. In Switch's case, it was the same thing. Bobby did a lot of damage because of his own issues, but it took all of us to be together and be strong enough to help him get through that. And that was not the case. And I wouldn't dare point a finger at my brothers, because they endured what they could and they did what they could, and they would have done more if they thought they could do more. You know, so we're not dumping and blaming the whole thing on Bobby. Bobby may have been the dynamite, but somebody had to light it.
Right. And the reason I asked that question, and I wanted to, because I saw on your unsung where you talked about your in that you said, hey, you had your own addiction and you had to get yourself together, and other people had to do the same thing. And people forget too. Let me say this. This is what a lot of people forget, and this is my final question I have for you. So I'm gonna ask the question first and let you take it, and then I'll comment from it, which is, looking back uh looking back at the group in your time, in you guys' prime, what did you realize about you guys being so young? So a lot of people are looking at you, I mean, looking at the group, and they think you're supposed to know in every situation what to do. And people forget, man, y'all were young, man. You come in
Yes,
the
yes, we were.
not just young in the business, but you're also young in life. You still trying to figure out what kind of man you want to be, you know?
Right. Absolutely. Thank you for that one, man, because we never get that acknowledgement that, mistakes were made because we were young, as well as the accomplishments were made because we were young. But I dare say this: we didn't know, man. Check this out. You got 6 little whole black kids. Ain't been exposed to too much. Ain't never had no real money. I know I was on welfare when I grew up. I don't know whether Eddie was. I know Bobby and Tommy was. I don't believe Jody was or Philip was. But they had certain things going on in their lives too. Philip had a solid family. He had his mom and dad. Jody had a stepdad and his mom. Bobby and Tommy, they had, when Bob was a truck driver, so he wasn't there half the time. When he was there, he wreaked havoc.
Right.
Eddie lost his dad when he was young. Okay. Anyway, all of that to say that we didn't have fathers to guide us. With the exception of Philip, we didn't have fathers to guide us. So, and then when we were away from home at 17, 18, 19 years old, because I think Philip was 17 when I brought him out, we had to struggle through, and learn however we learned. Just like, for a fact, that somebody had to point me to, and damn near take me to an attorney to cover Switch's butt. I knew I needed an attorney because I signed with Barry White, and Barry White just made me sign the MF. So after that, I realized I ain't never signing no contract again without a lawyer. I went and learned, man. I went to the libraries and I learned how to read and write a contract. That was part of the things that I shared. That was an example of what me and the guys did. When we ran into something, we had to go learn it because it was all new to us. We were just kids. And then here we got Barry Gordy, who is experienced and made so many talented people. And I keep saying Barry Gordy because a lot of record companies, you just got the legal department and the promotion department. No, with Motown, Switch was blessed to have the guy that found it, the guy that created it.
Yeah.
And I dare say it was a blessing.
No,
and I also say that we learned more than we would have ever learned anywhere else. Good, bad, and indifferent.
Right.
They kept the money, but we got the education. and we still rolling, and we still rolling with it. Okay.
And that's why I wanted to point out, because I think a lot of people miss that when I always tell people, man, just go back to when you was 18, 19, 20, 21. You thought you knew.
Right.
I tell my daughters all the time, that's the problem being young. You think you know more than the people already traveled the road before you. For some reason, I say that's just a hang up of being young. I don't know what it is about being young. You just think you know when you don't. And to your point, it's not even about, even if you came from a family of people who had money, but if they hadn't been in that business,
Right.
you're still, now you still green, you still got to learn, because
That's right.
there's nobody in the family that's been in the business to tell you guys. And what people don't understand is you guys were also out of your comfort zone. In other words, you're in LA, but you're not from LA. People don't understand. It's different when
Right.
also you're not even you don't
talk.
have not just mom and them. You don't have your uncles or somebody to say, "Hey man, this is what's going on, man. What you think I ought to do?" You ain't got, because let's keep in mind, everyone, we're talking about the 70s, early 80s. Some cell phones went out. They went like you was just, you can't be running up the bill, running mama bill up, call
Asking mama questions about something she don't know in the first place.
in the first place. See, people forget all that. They see the documentaries and they try to equate it today, and you can't.
You can't do that. It's unjustified. Let me clarify this with you, Otis.
Sure.
The beauty of that whole thing is we had each other. I had insight. I dare say I had insight. For example, I talked about me. I own the name Switch.
Okay.
Gregory and them wanted to take it. Motown wanted to take it. And I told them, after fighting with them a couple of weeks, I'll go back to Grand Rapids and work in a factory before I give you your name. Now, this is at a time when all the white acts and black acts were giving up their name. They were signing off their names. I didn't care because I had learned Barry White took White Heat back from Switch. So I had learned that. But another thing is this. Those 6 guys, we had each other, and we were going to protect each other for what it was worth. So therefore, all the external input that we may have thought we needed or that may have been available or whatever, we internalized what we did and we learned. And they trusted me, man. I'm so thankful they trusted, because check this out, man. This doesn't happen. I told those guys before I left them in Mansfield, Ohio in February of 1997, I told them I'll have a deal in 9 days. And I left them in that house. I told them I'd have a deal in 2 weeks, excuse me. And I left them in that house believing that. And they believe that. You don't get no deal like that. Come on. And then I shared with you that me and Jody only had 1 tape because we couldn't afford to get a second one. You don't get no deal like that. And you know something? We met Jermaine on the 9th day of being there. And everything happened from there.
And because think about if they would have said, well, we like you, but we're gonna pass. Then the next thing would have had to come out your mouth was like, hey, I need to get that tape back.
That's
because
right.
Like you said, it was the only one you had.
But Otis, wait a minute. Let's not even go that far, because the truth of the matter, once we gave him that tape, we didn't have his phone number. So if he had not called us back the next day, he didn't have to say, we like you, but.
Oh, yeah, you're right. He
didn't have to call us back. And it was over. And it was over, man. Come on.
And then now what you do, because he got the music, and we can't shop ourselves without the music.
We're out of business. That's what I said. We out of business.
You did say that. We out of business.
So you know what? But God ordained this whole thing, and he took it step by step, including me going back to get Bobby, because Tommy was already, all of that was orchestrated beyond me. I love to say I did it, and you hear me say I created. Come on, man. God did this and used me as a vehicle, and I'm so thankful to have been used like that. I don't know what to tell you.
And the crazy part is you putting it together, seeing also the gift that Bobby had, and like you said, it was worth it, and that allowed us to see the other DeBarge family.
That's right.
Other members that allowed, because they was on the same label, so that allowed us to see.
Yeah, I pushed that issue. I pushed that issue before anybody. I told Jermaine and Hazel, I said, you like Bobby and Tommy. I said, but check this out. There's a whole gang of DeBarges back there in Grand Rapids. And so when we wound up going on a promotional tour, I told them, if we can see them there, y'all need to see them. And I told Bobby and Tommy, have them come up to Detroit, because they weren't a group, but they always sing together. They were a family, and they always sang together. They grew up singing together. So once they met Jermaine and Hazel at that thing in Detroit, it was on from that point.
You know, that's the only part I think of the movie they might have got right when they did Bobby's thing was they were showing it, and you know sometimes Hollywood fabricates, but they were showing you who was played by I can't think of the young Lloyd. And they said hey, can they sing? You was like can they sing? Like, man, what? They all can sing. What are you talking about? Can they sing?
Every one of them.
Every one of them. And so you were the one, because you could have been, and here's the selfishness, the unselfishness of you that people don't talk about. You could have been looking at it like, okay, I see what y'all doing. Okay, I see. And you could have been try to throw some salt in the game and been like, hey, they all right. They ain't really saying like that. They all right, you know, or they ain't worth the trouble. You see how Bobby is. You see, you could have, but you didn't do that. You was like, hey, man.
Because you got to understand this too. Bobby and Tommy and I traveled the roads together and saw parts of the world together. But those were still my brothers and sisters.
Correct.
What a lot of people do not know, and it is in book 2, I managed El's career from 1996 to 2003. So, you know, as things evolved, you know, he went solo. I would have managed the whole group, but the others were doing what they were doing, and El was the only one that was solid. So we moved on, and he came back to get his big brother to help him do what he needed to do. And I went and got them to do what they could do from the very beginning, and they come back to get me. And it's just that simple.
I tell you what, I did not know, before I let you go, because we're going to do a part 2 to this.
Yeah, I'm with that.
What I did not know once El became who he became, right? And I was like, well, shoot, he was just, you know, he was just as good or better than Bobby. Now, when I went back, watch this. When I went back and listened to Bobby's vocals, there's a range. Bobby went into another stratosphere that nobody else in that family could go get. There was notes Bobby could go get. Nobody else could go get those notes. And then it made me understand why El said, no, Bobby was, no, like you said, no,
Bobby got more talent in his one finger, and his one finger, and the whole family got all together. That's what he said.
Yeah, he's like, no, Bobby, no, don't, because I think he knew people were getting it twisted, and he knew vocally. He's like, nah, man, ain't nobody in the family can touch Bobby. Ain't nobody.
You know, and let me share something with you, and I wrote it in my book as well. After that meeting, the family came up to Detroit. We were doing a record store. After that, Jermaine and Hazel and I were in our hotel rooms. And they said, Greg, we like them. What do you think? What do you think we should do with them? I said, hell, you should sign them. I said, but I got to tell you this. I said, Bobby is the most talented out of all of them. I said, but El will go to places that Bobby can only dream of. And that was because I knew El was not as crippled as Bobby was. And that handicap was going to kill him. But I knew El could conquer the world. And even to this day, I have hope that he does.
Yeah, El, the thing about El has that swag. El has that thing, as you know, we say it, that you don't know what it is, but you just know who got it and who don't have it. That's basically all you can say. It's like he got it. That's what El has. So
I'll tell you something else he can add to his arsenal too, and everybody else can. El has got resiliency.
Yes.
That brother can bounce back from one tragedy after another and keep it moving. He called me. He was in Indiana. He called me the other night, said, come on down. He's playing at the Black Expo in Indianapolis. Hell, I can't just get on the plane. I'm working next week myself. So, but he's doing his work. He's keeping it moving. I mean, he's performing all over the world. I'm proud of him. I'm happy of him. And that drug thing is not the dominant aspect of his life. He may pop up on TMZ every now and then, but L is popping up on stages all around the world.
Yeah,
You
man.
understand?
Yeah, we still love L, man, and
I know that. I
we
know that.
we we love you, man, because with you
Thank
being
you.
friends of the family and being close to the family as you are and were at that time as well, that it allowed us to see in the group switch as well as to see the DeBarge family. And I tip your hat to that. And what a lot of
Thank
people
you.
don't know, and you mentioned it, but I just before I sign off, I still want to give you kudos because the thing that you felt that may happen with the group that happened because you just knew the issues that Bobby DeBarge had, you still was there at the near the end of his life. At the end, you were still that same friend. See, people don't understand friendship is not based on me telling you what you want to hear all the time.
Right.
Yes, I'm supposed to be your cheerleader and your boy and all that, but I'm also, if we're friends, if we're really friends, I'm
Thank
supposed to
you.
tell you about yourself when it's needed and vice versa. And
That's
so,
right.
but you knew when he needed you, you weren't sitting there like, nah, man, I'm sorry this happened to you, but you messed up my group, you this, that, and
Oh
the other.
God, no.
No, right. But see, a lot of people would do that. And you know that a lot of people would do that and hold that, but you was like, this still my brother.
Thank you.
I know who he is. At the core, I know who he is. And you held on to that. And a lot of people won't hold on to who somebody is. They hold on to the mistake someone made.
I know, and that's the sad thing about humans that they do that. But you know what, man? That was my brother from the beginning. No more than no more or no less than my blood siblings would I
Right,
look out. I might get mad at you. I might fight with you. Although I ain't going telling nobody else that you's a dog or nothing like
right,
that. But on a
right,
whole nother level, I'm gonna tell you to your face if you a dog.
right.
But cuss me out and be what you will, but you are still my brother, and I'm there when you call.
There it
And it's
is.
just that simple.
Well, thank you for
Simple.
coming on the show and blessing us with your presence. I'll get
Thank
back
you,
with
man.
you on your schedule, and then we'll do a part two, and we're gonna dive even deeper.
I ain't mad at that. Let's do this, partner. I
All right.
appreciate your questions. Hey, man, your questions are non-typical, and I appreciate them. I
Thank you,
appreciate you
sir.
asking and wanting to know some real issues because a lot of people don't get there. And so I welcome you anytime.
Thank you, sir. Be safe out
Absolutely.
there, and we love you.
All right. Otis. Thank
Peace.
you, sir. You take care.